Okay. I'm a conqueror. We gon' do something a little different this time. Let's go. I abide under the shadow of the Almighty. That means all haters and evildoers can't see me. Casting out all the demons in the industry. Spiritual assassin, target X, Y, and Z. See, I'm made from a God who's more than enough. Carries the weight of the world, yeah, my God is buff. Even when life and reality, they get so rough. I'm cut from iron cloth, man, I'm tough. I'm in the CIA, in Christ I abide. The FBI, a faith-bred individual. I got my credentials, very influential. That's why I can say I'm a conqueror. I'm a conqueror. I'm a conqueror. I'm a conqueror. Say it. 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 I'm a conqueror. Say it.
Have you ever felt like what you're going through, that there's no purpose attached to it? Have you ever felt like what I'm going through can literally destroy me? Well, I'm here in Newport Coast and I'm going to be interviewing Rhonda Shortino. She has a great story of how she was brought up as an abused child, but now God has brought her out of that and made her a success. Come find out how she did it here on the Kingdom Business Show. So Rhonda, we're here in your neighborhood, right here at Mariners Church. And so I wanted to get some insight into your story. I love your story, and I just want to share it with all of our audience today, just where you come from. You're such a success. You've written books, you've been on the Today Show, you speak, and you just do a lot of great things, but evidently you didn't come out the womb like that. So tell me about your process and how you got to this level of your life.
Okay, so the short version is, because you know me, I could talk to you for a week and a half. I was about 6 months old, and the novelty of being a mom wore off, and my mother asked the neighbor to babysit me while she went shopping.
Wow.
But she didn't go shopping. Her clothes were packed and her car was loaded, and she moved out of state, and she never came back.
Wow.
And so, after the diapers were used up and the formula was used up, the neighbors started looking around, who's going to come get this kid? And I became a ward of the court. And so in those days, it was, it was a very different thing. If they could find a relative and put a child with a relative, then, that was basically it. So I was sent to live with my maternal grandparents. So my grandfather was mentally ill. My grandmother was an alcoholic and an addict. So they were just a little bit crazy. That's a technical term. They just weren't right. And so, my grandfather had been abandoned and abused, and so he just was filled with a lot of anger, took that anger out on whoever happened to be the closest person. So we lived in poverty. He couldn't hold down a job. So we lived in like a 500 square foot shack, about the size of a garage, didn't have working plumbing, didn't have a shower. So imagine, I just went months and months and months without a bath or washing my hair or anything like that. Didn't own a toothbrush until I was 13 years old. So, I just was like a little wild animal. It was a really scary neighborhood. There were, gangs and drug dealers, and there was a Hell's Angels house 3 doors down. So it was a crazy neighborhood, but inside the house where I lived was actually scarier. Because I knew where the neighbors stood, but you kind of didn't know how to predict the way my grandparents would be.
And I want to interject right there. Generationally, there are things that happen in a previous generation that are amplified in another. And so you said that, hey, your grandfather, he was abandoned, he was mistreated, and so therefore all he knew was to duplicate that and really just project that on you. And so, so keep on going.
That whole generational piece is really an important point. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because child abuse, abandonment, neglect, it perpetuates until someone draws the line. For me, the line was Jesus Christ. And so when we give our lives over to God and say, okay, you know what, I'm a mess, my situation's a mess, take it and do something with it. It is just nothing short of a miracle, what God can and will do. And that's what he did in my life. What really happened there, I mean, I could go on and on and on with the blow-by-blow of abuse and, being burned and, all the things that happened in my childhood. But the good news is that abandonment, standing at the door waiting for my mother to show up, she never did. I've seen her 7 times in my life, including my adult life. So I know what she looks like. I know what her name is. But, as a little girl standing and waiting and her not ever showing up, well, guess what? God built in me self-reliance. I have never expected somebody to rescue me. I didn't expect, to marry a wealthy man, to buy a winning lottery ticket. I've never expected the government to help me. I have known that if I was going to do something good with my life, it would be because I rolled up my sleeves and got to it. Not to say that God hasn't done so much for me. He has. But I feel like he meets us.
Absolutely.
I have noticed that money doesn't show up in my bank account when I'm laying on the couch eating potato chips.
I wish it would.
I know, okay? But, when you get up and go out and start, try, show up. I mean, showing up is a big part of it. I know for me that the poverty, not having enough to eat, not having clothes to wear, having cutting the toes out of the shoes so that my growing feet, would poke out, but I'd still have something on the bottom of my feet. That poverty taught me resourcefulness.
Wow.
And even now, all these years later, when I've been so incredibly blessed financially, in terms of relationships with peace and joy, which I didn't even know anything about all, peace and joy. But even now, with all that I have, I know how to manage money. I know how to manage pennies and dollars. Because I had to. And so, it taught me, that poverty taught me money management. It taught me empathy for those who have less. It taught me gratitude for everything. I mean, clean sheets, clean water, being able to take a hot shower. I mean, I'm grateful for things that people in, beautiful Southern California here just take for granted.
Awesome.
I could go on and on, but all of my childhood experiences built in me characteristics. So courage, bravery, resourcefulness, resilience, the ability to manage money, all of that prepared me for God's plan for my life.
Wow. Now, that is, I love what you're saying, and I love the way that you really incorporate how God really has brought you through this process. But you know what? Not many people learn from it. Some people stay in it. So if a person is brought up in poverty, they're brought up in abuse, they're brought up in just things just lacking and not having enough, they generally perpetuate that throughout their lives. And so where was the breaking point for you? Where did you finally realize that, okay, I'm not going to be a victim to my environment, but instead I'm going to learn from it, take from it, pull from it, and then produce from it? Where was the breaking point for you?
I'm embarrassed to say that I was in my 40s.
Okay.
I wish that I would have, that this would have clicked in my head when I was much younger. But you know what? It didn't, and better late than never. But really, it came down to reading Romans 8:28.
Okay.
God works together for good, all things for those who love Him and are
called according to His purpose.
So I noticed He said all things.
All things.
All things.
Yeah.
He didn't say half of the things. He didn't say only those things you can understand. He actually said all things. And I remember, actually remember reading Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life, and literally, I chucked that book across the room because there was a place in that book that talked about, God just loves you, and there was one little sentence in there. I'm probably going to misquote it, but the gist of it that my spirit heard was that, oh yeah, God just loved, He just thought you were so cute when you were growing up. And I thought, really? God, what, enjoyed watching me get the stuffing beat out of me? And I chucked the book, And I started just going to the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And that's when I found Romans 8:28, and I said, okay, so if God works together all things, it was like, I'll just be honest with you and say, not a great attitude.
Yeah, of course.
When I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, then, how are you going to work together this over here?
Yeah.
I've got these scars from being burned. How does that work all together?
Yeah.
And you know what? He showed me. He showed me. And it began to come to me that because I was subject to abuse, that I was too little to prevent, too vulnerable to, do anything about, it built in me an empathy that you can't get in any university classroom.
Wow.
So later on, when I combined my career in the insurance industry with my passion for victims of abuse, I began to look at the way kids in foster care were injured or killed. I don't think I would have been able to do that very emotionally charged work had I not been through it myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this was one more place where God specifically brought everything together. And I realized if I was going to walk God's path for my life and I was going to let Him use all that, I had to set self-pity aside.
Yeah.
There's no place for me, throwing a pity party. And I'll tell you, I could throw a pity party, complete with, the music that would play when I was being beat. There were certain smells, there were certain, I could bring out the photographs of, I had a picture of my dad, his high school graduation picture. He lived 9 miles away and he knew I was being abused and he never intervened.
Wow.
So, I could surround myself with the pictures. I could put on the music. I could cry till there was no more water left in my body. And what did that give me? Nothing. But when I began to really mine the lessons out of what I'd been through and realize, you know what? I am more courageous than the average person. I'm stronger than the average person. I'm resilient. You can knock me down 7 times. You're bigger and stronger than me. You could knock me down 7 times, I'll get up the 8th time.
Absolutely.
Or I will die trying to get up the 8th time. So that resilience, and I realized, you know what? I am who I am because of what I've been through.
Wow. See, and it sounds like you made a decision.
Yes.
And the decisions have to be followed up with action, have to be followed up with a process, have to be followed up really and fueled by a purpose. And so it seems to me that you found a purpose for your life and you infused that purpose with passion and with drive and with focus. And I love what you just said, succeed because of what you've been through, which is, of course, your book. And you can mine the lessons that you've actually been through in order to make something of it. So put in the Romans 8:28, all things together. You can say, okay, well, because I grew up in this situation, because I grew up in, poverty and lack, people don't have to go through the same situation because I made a decision to fuel my purpose with passion and direct it towards a message and a assignment that's going to glorify God.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you talked about The Purpose-Driven Life. Rick Warren, amazing book. I mean, bestseller, international bestseller.
Right.
And so you talked a little bit about purpose. So number one, how did you find your purpose? And then what is purpose? Can you explain a little bit?
Oh, yes. I thank you for asking that. I feel like purpose for me is God's plan. Okay. I've done working with child welfare people all over the United States. All my friends are social workers or psychologists, and so I've taken like every personality assessment, and so there are a lot of great tools out there. Myers-Briggs and Strengths Finders.
Yes.
My favorite is through Right Fit Solutions.
Wow.
They're right here in Southern California. But what happens? You take these assessments. And it's, they say, well, you would be really good at this, or this, maybe exceptionally good at that. And so, Torian, what I realized is there are lots of things I can do. just because I can doesn't mean I should. It's kind of like wearing spandex.
Yeah.
You know, don't do every single thing you think you could do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's find the one thing that only we can do. Yeah. The thing that we were built to do, created to do, empowered, equipped to do. So the big $64,000 question is, you know, so how do you know that? How can you find that out? Yeah. Well, so I kind of went on this process of figuring out how to mine my lessons. So what characteristics do I have as a result of what I've been through? What were my coping mechanisms? How did I survive? So because, you know, what has helped us in the past may very well help us in the future. Absolutely. I realized that going through everything that I went through really prepared me, gave me the tools to be the CEO of my company. Yeah. So, you know, I didn't walk into it having an MBA. There were a million things I didn't know how to do, but I had the almost the, if you think about the infrastructure of the characteristics that empowered me to learn how to do what I needed to do, or hire the right people that had the skill sets to do what I needed done. Yeah, absolutely. Right? So as I went through this process of figuring out what I was good at, what I was passionate about, it was almost like puzzle pieces falling into place. Okay. And then it just kind of came off the page at me that, okay, so despite the fact that I can do all these things, this one thing is my thing. Yeah. And then the great thing is, once we begin to go in the direction of what we believe we were built to do and equipped to do, we begin to gain what I call all 5 facets of success.
Yes, talk to me about the 5 facets of success.
Yeah, so, you know, in the world, people say, oh, well, you know, if you're a millionaire, you know, that's success. Money is success. Well, look at, there are drug dealers who have a lot of money.
That's right.
You know, so you have to have a balance of it. You know, you can't be a super wealthy person and be a miserable human being. Yeah. You're not going to be able to share your wealth with anybody, right? Absolutely. Or drive yourself into an early grave, because you can't pack that coffin full of cash and have it arrive on the, you know, it's like, you know, going someplace and they lose your baggage. The cash will not be there wherever you go in the long run. So, you know, so it's having good relationships with good people. Yeah. It's having good health, all right? And we have better health when we're not stressed out all the time. Absolutely. And when we're doing something we really weren't built to do, it's just harder than it would be for the person who was built to do that. Yeah. In fact, kind of as an aside, I feel like when we're doing something that we weren't made to do, we're literally taking somebody else's assignment. Yeah, wow. We're literally stealing the purpose and the assignment of some other person.
Yeah, because people get this notion of, like you said, because I'm good at it, I should do it. And that may not necessarily be what you were designed for. And so I love that one of my great mentors and great heroes is Miles Monroe. He said there was a need in the earth that made your existence necessary. And so in business class and in business school when I was growing up at ORU, you know, one of my professors would always say, find a need and fill it. But I want to take it to the next place and find the need that you're supposed to fill and then fill that. Yes. And so,
and you know what? I mean, a lot of times we have to do, as we're younger and we're coming up, you really don't know until you do some different things. You know, so that doesn't mean sit on the couch and wait for your perfect assignment to just show up. Somebody's going to knock at your door and say, hey, come on, work here, and we'll pay you $500,000 a year. No, guess what?
It's not happening.
You're going to sit there for a long time and wait for that knock. Yeah. So, you know, we have to get out there. Yes. We just have to get out there and try different things, and always stay in prayer. I always tell people, pray, listen, act, repeat. That's all we need to do in our whole life.
Pray,
you know?
listen, act
and repeat.
So pray and asking God, what do you want me to do? What do you need me to do? Where are you directing?
What need is there that needs to be filled, that you created me to fill? And then you have to sit there and listen.
So, okay, take me through that listening. Are you listening with a pad? Or are you just sitting there just kind of with your eyes? But how are you listening?
You know what? At my age, I have to have paper and a pen.
Okay.
I don't want to watch, and then the phone rings and I go, oh, God, what did you say? No. If I were meeting today with the President of the United States, I would walk in with a paper and pen.
Absolutely.
If I'm meeting with a person of authority, I want to record. I want to not miss anything. I want to write that down. So when I'm going to spend time with the creator of the universe, I've got to get that down. So I have a little prayer journal, and I have my listening journal. So for me, it's writing down.
Wow.
But, I want to go back to all those 5 facets because I don't want to leave your audience going, wait, what were the other ones? So good relationships, good health, peace. Peace.
Yes.
I didn't even know what that was.
No.
I lived in chaos and dysfunction. And I was in my 40s before I realized, I became a carrier of dysfunction and chaos.
Yeah.
I created it because that's what I was used to.
Yeah.
And I didn't know until I learned that behind my back, my employees called me the Tasmanian devil.
Oh,
I don't know if you ever saw those
of
cartoons.
Course. Oh, yeah.
I was I thought, really?
Wow.
They see me as just spinning around, creating havoc.
Wow. I want to capture something right here. I just got a great epiphany. You're in business carrying all of this different stuff.
That's right.
So could it be possible that you can still be successful but still be carrying so much baggage and so much weight, and you're adversely, although on the outside, on paper, you may be successful, people acknowledge you, all those different things, but your effectiveness, is that really success?
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that. Wow. Yeah, I mean, my the bottom line on my balance sheet was 7 figures. So the world would say I was successful before I was 30.
Wow.
But not great relationships. Wow. Not great health. I had a Costco bottle of aspirin on my desk, and I was eating them like candy at 29 years old.
Wow.
Just constantly in pain. I had that chaos. The next facet is joy.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have joy. I didn't even know what joy was. And I would hear joy unspeakable and full of glory. Whatever. I don't know. I was raised by atheists. I don't know. I didn't get that class. I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And I get now, back then, I knew about happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I could be happy right up until somebody cut me off in traffic.
Like
happiness, flying away, done. And so I didn't understand joy, but now I have joy in me.
Yeah.
I'm a carrier of joy. I take my joy where I go.
Yeah.
So there can be chaos and there can be all kind of stuff going on. And I'm impacted by it from the standpoint that I can have empathy, but I don't lose my joy.
That's it. So you're the thermostat rather than the...
Oh, I love that. Yes, yes. And then the last one's financial stability and even wealth. And there's nothing wrong with it.
Say it again.
There's nothing wrong
One more
with
time.
wealth. Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Because if I want to pay for children to get an education, they're not going to get any other way. I have to have them.
I'm so glad you said that again, because Deuteronomy 8:18 says, "For it is He who gives you the power to get wealth."
And He wouldn't do that if it was wrong.
Exactly.
So there's nothing wrong with it unless we let that be the first thing we seek.
Yeah.
As long as we're seeking God first, fulfilling our purpose and letting God be glorified in us,
Yes.
and all of that's in place and that's in balance, then there's nothing wrong with having that financial remuneration for what we're doing, because we're blessed to be a blessing.
That's right.
So to build the kingdom, to help kids, to help, the people on my heart are kids who have been abused. And we know that kids coming out of the foster care system, more than 50% of them wind up homeless.
Wow.
We know that a very large percentage of current and former foster kids are recruited into sex trafficking.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some real pain in the world.
Yeah.
And yes, prayer is good
Yes. I'm glad
in that fight.
Yeah.
But it also helps to be the one who can write the check and say,
That's
you know what, I'll pay for that kid to go to school.
That's right.
I'll pay to build that school.
Yeah.
To educate these kids, to teach them a trade, to teach them something that they can do immediately, because honestly, you and I both know there is no better way to build our self-esteem than an earned paycheck at honorable work.
Yes.
You know, so when we empower others to find and fulfill their good plans, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And we know that in this world's economy, it takes money to do that.
It does, absolutely. And, you know, I believe that, along with what you said, that I believe that now is a time where God is raising up people who understand his call and his assignment and his purpose in their lives. And those who would dive and lean into it, as you would say, would literally be supernaturally supplied with the favor, with the finances, and with all the things that they need. And one of my great mentors would say that favor always comes before the finances. That God will grant you favor, but don't count the finances out, because finances are needed to drive the economy, to drive a vision, to drive, you know, things into existence. And so I'm so glad that you said that. So we got to follow a plan, right, of praying, listening to God. What else? Acting and repeat.
You have to get up and act on it.
Okay.
So I've had so many times in my life, there's not time for me to tell you about it, but to make it real and understandable, one quick story was I had a realtor call me and say, you know what, I've got this building, it fell out of escrow, the people need to sell it, it's an amazing price, you know, I'm just calling to see, I'm going down my list to see if you're interested. Was it that good of a deal? Oh yes, it's a really good deal. I literally said to this guy, why aren't you calling your mom? Why don't you, if it's that big of a deal, why don't you call your mom and give her that? And he said, you know what, my mom's not in a position to do it, and I would do it myself, but my wife and I are buying a house right now, I just can't. So you came to mind.
Wow.
I said, okay, I'll do it. Sight unseen. I've never done this before.
Wow.
I prayed real quick. I had peace about it, right? So we're supposed to be governed by our peace.
That's right.
I said, okay, I'll do it. That property, closed escrow, I had a buyer lined up, sold it. I made a good profit. I mean, a 6-figure profit.
Wow.
And we're talking like, I don't know, 40, 45 days.
Come on.
And I never did a lick of work. I mean, I didn't even go see the place. So, I mean, God will give us opportunities. But you know, how many people have you known who came up with an idea and they said, oh, you know, I don't know, that'll never work. Or they dismiss it. Or they say, oh, I don't know anything about trying to get a patent. Or they put it off, and 6 months later you see a commercial on TV. Oh, I thought of that. Well, really? Because you didn't do anything about it.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I say this all the time, that most people start with an idea and they never turn it into a vision. And so you get the idea of this plan, this purpose, this something, this widget, this product, this business, and you sit on it and you have that type of situation. Well, they have your idea, but if you would turn your ideas into vision, vision requires purpose, vision requires a process, vision requires people, and vision requires just a procedure in the way that you get it out of you. And so it's action that gets that idea and turns it into a vision. So
so when God says, you know, he gives us the power to get wealth, or the ability to create wealth, or whatever, there's a verb in there. You know, there's action, there's getting up. So yeah, pray, listen, act, and then repeat. You know, because we get to a certain point, it's like, oh, okay, well, now what? Well, guess what? Pray again. You know, and our whole lives can be done that way.
Wow.
What's the need? What do we need to do to fill the need? And because, you know, as I said earlier, everybody in the world doesn't know from the time they're a child what they're supposed to do with their life. For some people, it's, you know, take this job and work there for 5 years. Oh, this other opportunity. You know, maybe it's a process. I know for me, I was in the same industry of my whole life,
Yeah.
but I've done different things until I got to the point where I sort of, it's almost like I had to get up to see the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Okay, then it starts to come into view and vision, but you have to live enough years on planet Earth, you know, to get to that point.
Yeah. Wow.
So.
Wow. Well, Rhonda, your story is amazing. What you do for just those who are hurting as children is just absolutely superb. And what you're doing even now, just in your life, just being you, is just really, really great. And so how does your husband, because of course you're married for how many years now?
Oh my goodness, 20-something. Oh,
20-something
I should
years.
know that. Long time.
Yeah. So how does he support you in your vision? I mean, does he, and give some insight to our guests as well. I mean, excuse me, our audience. Does your spouse have to be 1,000%, in the same vein as you, or how does he support you? How does he support
No,
you?
that's a great question. My husband and I probably are like two of the most different people on earth.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny how God does that, because if he was just like I am, where I think I heard something from God and I launch at 180 miles an hour, if we were both like that, I don't know where we'd be. We'd be running down the road going, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't you? So my husband is the, he's more contemplative.
Yes.
He's going to think about something for about 40 years, before he does the research.
Yeah.
And I tease him about it, but God knew what he was doing, putting us together, because we're on opposite ends of that continuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll say now that we've been together all these years, instead of it being like, well, I don't know, you're not listening to God, you're just sitting there and but now I get, okay, all right, here's what I'm thinking of, here's what I feel like God's put on my heart, what do you think?
Yeah.
And now he's really going to think and then tell me, have you thought of this? What about that?
Yeah.
So instead of me finding out the hard way, which is, many years ago in my past, running out and then going, oh, shoot, I didn't think of this or that, So now it's a more thoughtful approach to fulfilling the plans. And so it's a good thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that, you joined me today, and I'm so glad that, just me knowing you and just really seriously, honestly getting to know you has really impacted my life, and I know it's impacting so many other people's lives. So in conclusion, we have to find this purpose that God has placed on the inside of us, and we can find that, of course, by just asking God or mining the things that we've been through, because all things work together for those who love God, who are called according to His purpose.
That's right.
And so we can do that. And then also, if we need to find out what direction I'm supposed to take, if this is the business, if this is the marriage, if this is the relationship, if this is the way that God is calling me to, I need to pray, I need to listen, I need to act, and then I need to repeat. When I get to the next step, I need to pray, listen, act, and repeat.
That's right.
And then, of course, that our lives encompass a few different facets, which are
it's good relationships, good health, peace, joy, and financial stability.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for your time. I appreciate you. And we've come to another end of our Kingdom Business Show, and where we are uncovering how people are expanding the kingdom of God in everyday life. Many people think that in order for me to impact God, impact the kingdom of God, impact people for God, I have to be behind a pulpit. No, you don't have to do that. You just have to find your God-given purpose, lean into it, and be placed exactly where God is calling you to. And so, until next time, this is Kingdom Business. We'll see you next time.
Get your shadow song. The war's already won.